Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Anth. The world population will soon hit 8 billion. But 2 million years ago, when the Homo genus began, our ancestors, we were a few thousand people living in the continent of Africa. How and when did our ancestors move out of Africa to spread around the world? Prior to attending graduate school to study human origins, I'd lived and driven all over the lower 48 states of the United States. Much of the western half of the U.S. is lightly populated, but environments are strikingly different throughout the region. Driving across the plains of Kansas is akin to floating down a quiet stream in a canoe that abruptly ends in the tricky navigation required to summit mountains and then trying to avoid burning out your brakes as you race down the other side. At that point, you arrive in the rugged and desolate Great Basin, where you can drive for hours without seeing any signs of life. Or we can drive the back roads of Greater Appalachia, which twist through the hills and ford countless creeks. Driving throughout the country, particularly off the major highways, makes it clear how diverse and difficult it can be to get from one place to another through varying environments and ecosystems. Now, let's mentally travel far back in time when the only way for humans to travel was by walking from place to place. How far could they travel from sources of fresh drinking water? How easily could they move from one ecosystem to another when each ecosystem required different knowledge and methods for obtaining food? What I discovered in grad school was that most of the male archaeologists and paleoanthropologists whose articles I read seemed to think that the world was flat and that people could easily and speedily move from ecosystem to ecosystem, rapidly populate new regions outside of Africa within at most a few thousand years. I could only assume that they'd never driven through diverse ecosystems, such as occur in the western half of the United States. And also, those men did not seem to think of populations as including women, babies, and small children. Here's the reality. A woman nursing a baby who also has a small child is the limiting factor on where and how far a population moves. Men may go off and explore, but the women will not move unless and until there are no longer adequate resources for her to feed herself and her children. Women provide the majority of food for their families. They must know every edible plant, all the small game animals, and fresh and saltwater resources along the shores. This knowledge is passed from mother to daughter. It cannot be learned rapidly. Groups cannot make radical ecosystem changes. Any enlargement of territory or edging into a different ecosystem would only occur very slowly over a period of generations. Populations did move, but the expansion into new territories would probably not be visible in the span of most lives. People didn't know how big the world was or have plans to, let's travel 100 miles to a new territory. Why would they decide to do that? foraging populations have lived for thousands, even tens of thousands of years in the same general territory as their ancient ancestors. As long as food and water were available, why would women want to move? Also, a pregnant woman wants to be near her older female relatives. Giving birth is safer and easier when experienced women are available to help the new mother. Why would any woman want to leave behind that support? Even in the 21st century, we find that pregnant women who have lived far from their mothers frequently move nearer when the baby is due. Human babies are among the most helpless of all mammal infants. Why would women who live near their families want to travel a long distance into a new, unknown ecosystem where finding food would be difficult and where they would not have the support of their families when they gave birth? It just would not happen. The movement out of Africa began 2 million years ago. It was a very slow, gradual process. There was no sudden movement out of Africa 60,000 or 70,000 or 100 or even 250,000 years ago, in which a small group managed to rapidly populate the world. That defies both logic and biology. Only men who looked at maps but had little experience of actually traversing diverse ecosystems, and who never considered that women who are nursing infants are the constraining factor of movement of populations, would have published such ridiculous ideas. Ignoring the critical role played by women in how populations function is a major failure of archaeology and paleoanthropology that is finally beginning to change. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel.